And welcome in to your LSU Football Fix. I'm Preston Guy, and joined with me as always is Zack Nagy of LSU's Country on SportsIllustrated.com. Today was Brian Kelly's opening press conference. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm bringing back a fun guest who we had last year, Latham Jr., the outspoken, formerly with TMZ, kind of a big name LSU guy. Last year, I brought him on to pick the schedule, and he picked 9-3. LSU went 9-3. So we're going to bring him on every year until he gets one wrong. So until he's one game off, he's going to keep on coming back. So I talked to him about that. He'll be coming on in a bit. We're going to open up briefly with the press conference and some notes to go over about that before we dive in fully into LSU schedule. What's going on, Zack?
Not too much, man. Long day today. Long press conference today. Brian Kelly, he kind of killed it. The opening statement was really long. It was about 9-10 minutes long, and then obviously opened up for questions, and it was really informative. He killed it, as always.
He spoke for nearly 32 minutes. That is a long time for a coach to sit and talk with people. Cracked some jokes on Leah Van, showed that quirky sense of humor that he has that goes over a lot of people's head, and was very forthcoming on a lot of details. But before we go too far into that, got to thank our sponsor tonight, Celebrity Theaters, for making all this happening. Y'all make sure to go support them with their 3 locations in Baton Rouge, Broussard, and Ruston. But of course, I have to tell y'all tonight, we're going to have a very, very busy school. We were going to have 3 guys picking 12 games, right? And maybe a little sauce extra. Last year, we didn't really get to do that extra like postseason prediction because me and Van, I was 8-4. He was 9-3. We didn't really have any postseason ambitions. I think that might change this year. So of course, make sure to if you want to get your comment up there, I'm not going to get as many comments as I usually do. Super chat. And that's the good way to get your stuff up there if you really want to get something up. Of course, make sure to like and subscribe the channel, guys. Remember, Mike Scarborough makes fun of me every time my likes are down. Last week, we got the likes up a good bit. Okay, so I got made fun of a little bit less, but I still not as high as what he did. So I'm still getting bullied in between shows. So if y'all could help me combat the bullying that Mike Scarborough does, I'd be greatly appreciative. Okay, so BK's presser today. Is there any one thing that stood out to you the most?
I'm gonna be greedy, and I'm gonna say 2 different things because there was so much that he hit on. Obviously, I mean, he went with the return specialist, and he's given true freshman Caleb Jackson kind of a big time role right there, and I think that's fantastic. Obviously, he's gonna be the off ball returner, but I still think getting him on the field and letting him get acclimated to a college system is phenomenal. And then Aaron Anderson, he's an absolute dog, and he's phenomenal in open space. So to kind of get him as your punt returner and kick return specialist, it's incredible. I'm excited to see how that pans out. And then kind of the Mason Smith thing that he said, even if he wasn't suspended, he'd be questionable for this week 1 matchup anyway. So that was something that really, kind of caught my eye as well. But it was just such an informative, just an incredible press conference from Brian Kelly. He hit on a lot of key subjects, but definitely the return specialist as well as, for the most part, the Mason Smith news.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And what really stands out is just the years of Les Miles, just no forthcoming information. And Ogeron was a bit better, but not nearly as organized. I mean, he has guys listed as questionable, doubtful. This is like an NFL presser.
It's a professional type injury report,
which I like because it sets the environment. It prepares guys to perform in an NFL type environment. I think that's very much so. That's why they're calling it the path. It's the path to the NFL. Mm-hmm. So that's what he's going with there. I think you hit nail on the head with the biggest point. Aaron Anderson, Caleb Jackson returning kicks, which I think Caleb Jackson returning kicks, even as the off returner, a little surprising. We didn't really see him out there returning kicks.
It was interesting just because like Brian Kelly kind of like slowed the roll last week when we were talking about Caleb Jackson because there was so much hype coming off of that Saturday scrimmage. Everybody was just like, just talking very highly of him, as they should, because he was balling out. But Brian Kelly kind of pumped the brakes on that, and he was like, there's some things that he has to work on. And then obviously return game and running backs, 2 different things. But to get him on the field and get acclimated is like I said, for the millionth time, fantastic. I'm really intrigued to see how it pans out.
What stands out to me is, in my opinion, Aaron Anderson and Caleb Jackson are your 2 most explosive athletes. Chris Hilton's right up there with them. And of course, Malik is as well, but I think that those 3 are a slight step above Malik.
And you
in
said
terms
that
of
last week too about Caleb Jackson. Like that's spot on. You said that
yeah.
during last week's
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly. So it's to get your two most explosive athletes on the field for your kick returners, that's a really big deal because last year you did not have your most you had your most sure-handed guy, Greg Clayton, out there just catching. So I think that if those two guys can be sure-handed, which most returners are sure-handed, if they can be, then I think that's the biggest upgrade on the team. I think Aaron Anderson returned more than it was like 20 special teams touchdowns at Edna Carr.
I bet you covered a lot of his games when he was at Edna Carr with Mike because
Yeah,
he's one of the most electric Louisiana players ever, in my opinion, at the high school ranks. Just receiver, special teams, he did it all. I mean, he was an absolute dog at Edna Carr.
he's just a guy with when you give him space. I mean, he's just incredible. And that's what you get on kickoffs and punt returns. So ideally, that's a colossal upgrade. And the Caleb Jackson's surprising to see him out there kickoff, but I like it. I also like it because Caleb Jackson is a thick guy who running full speed can probably throw a block as well. So a lot of things I like about that.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
What also stood out to me, BK, he had a lot of things that I say a lot on the show. If you watch the show and you watch the press conference, he mentioned a lot of the points that I hit on. We talk about continuity a lot on this show and how there was just no continuity at all. He mentioned continuity of the offensive line. He mentioned continuity of coaching staff and how these things are going to help. And these are things that I've been harping on for 365 days on, or probably closer to 358. I think I started on that point after the Florida State game, pointing out how there was no continuity and it looked like a team with no continuity. So that was interesting. He also talked about Jayden Daniels, and I'm actually going to play the clip here of him talking about Jayden. And Zach, what have I been telling you about the one thing Jayden needs to improve on this year if he wants to take that next step?
Pushing the ball vertically. It's what everybody in their right mind's been saying. Completely.
Let's listen to
what
BK has said.
I think with Jayden, what we've tried to do in that developmental process is like think of 7-on-7 in every throw. Every throw is fourth down. So you got one chance here. And I think last year every throw was first and 10. So it was check down. It was, look for maybe the easiest completion out there. Throw it back shoulder on the tight end, even if he's covered. Push the ball down vertically. Let's go make a play down the field. And I think that development and his own mindset and the way he attacks things is probably where we've seen that growth. And that's been exciting to watch.
There you go. That is Brian Kelly. I mean, basically what we've been talking about on this show with him taking that next step. He said he goes out there and he acts like every play is first and 10. Kind of a funny comparison because we've been talking about Nussmeier, how every throw is 4th and 13. But
he always tries to get away from that gunslinger narrative, but he's an absolute gunslinger.
He has taken some progress on that.
Absolutely.
But you are sadly mistaken if you think his first read isn't that seam or fade. He 100% wants to do that. And I think that one day his career will be defined as the guy who made a lot of dumb throws, but he made up for it by taking those deep shots and hitting them, 50% or 30% of them. So, he would end up with a big game, but he, needed to be more check down. Jayden Daniels last year could almost be categorized as a check down Charlie. Granted, there's benefits with that. That's not an insult. I mean, he only had 2 turnovers all year. That's incredible to throw the ball.
So mind blowing to me. Like when we were getting towards the back end of the year and he only had like 1 interception or something, it was just like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's so smart with the ball, but at the same time, it's just a lot of check downs and short throws. And that's what I like to see from Jayden Daniels. Like during fall camp was he was kind of hitting on the intermediate throws, and that was impressive to me. Obviously, 20+ yard throws. You and I were talking about that last week too, but to see him kind of like improving in that aspect of going intermediate, it's a work in progress, and I think he'll get there sooner rather than later.
I certainly hope so, and it definitely looked like it for most of fall camp. I do think the 11-on-11 portion, those 43 plays we got to watch, were probably 20 or so were Jayden Daniels. I do think he got a little check downy, but we're talking about 11 throws.
Yeah, agreed.
Do not overreact to 11 throws at practice. That's Do not ever do that. So we'll see. I have a hunch he's gonna take steps forward. I don't think he's going to be 100% improved. I do think we're probably going to see a few more interceptions, like 5 maybe this year.
And
But
that's a good thing. And that's a good thing in my opinion. Obviously, you don't want to turn the ball over and you don't want to give the other team opportunities. But to me, it's a good thing because, he's taking more chances and trusting his arm to a degree. Obviously, if it ends in an interception, it's not the best thing in the world. But for me, take some shots, push the ball down the field. And that was something that Brian Kelly stressed last year. He wasn't really happy that, he didn't have that many interceptions because he wasn't pushing the ball downfield. So you take shots and sometimes it doesn't go your way. So I'm intrigued to see how this plays out again for this.
As long as it's a manageable amount of turnovers, if you're talking about half a turnover per game, it's absolutely worth the extra production and making the defense account for it as well. I mean, it will just be instrumental in terms of the success of this team. If I had to pick a singular player's performance that would impact this team the most, I would say Jayden Daniels' ability to push the ball downfield. That could be the difference between 9-3 and a championship. Quite frankly,
this team will only go as far as Jayden Daniels goes. I mean, he's the signal caller. He's at the helm. He's doing everything he can, and I think as he improves, the team will improve, and we saw that last season.
Man, you're just hitting on how far the team will get carried. I can't wait to get Van in here and break down the schedule. It kills me to be patient and just wait until this first week before the season to pick every game, but it does create a fun show before the season. So we're going to get to that in a bit. First, I do want to thank Celebrity Theaters for making tonight's show possible. Remember, they're your only locally owned and operated theater in Louisiana, with locations in Baton Rouge, Broussard, and Ruston. For years, Celebrity Theaters has been committed to providing a total family entertainment to its patrons. Because it's locally owned and operated, you're guaranteed to see a clean facility, better pricing, superior customer service, and state-of-the-art technology. The Baton Rouge location has an invigorating arcade featuring over 50 games. It's the largest in town. It has a bar featuring wine, beer, and frozen drinks, oversized leather reclining seats, and of course the Dolby Atmos sound system, which is going to be just an incredible atmosphere for the Oppenheimer movies of the world. And guys, I've said it 1,000 times. Could you imagine growing up? Maybe Zack is young enough where he just like reclining seats in theaters are just normal. Did you grow up with reclining seats in theaters, Zack?
I didn't grow up with them. But, as I got older, obviously they were around more. But you and I always joke about how I have no hobbies because I don't watch movies. So even if they were there when I was growing up, I wouldn't know because I was too busy watching sports.
So this no hobbies thing, it's not new. It's been your whole life you've had no hobbies.
Yeah, it's bad.
All right, we're going to take hobby suggestions throughout the show and season. Like I said, by end of season, come February, he's going to have a new hobby, but I just don't know yet. We'll figure it out. Although you were telling me about like your TV setup for game day, like don't you have like 3 TVs, YouTube TVs set up
we just set
in like your man cave, bunch of dudes just man, you might be a sicko. I don't know, man.
With 3 TV setup, you can't beat that, dude. Come on, you can put 3 college games on it once. YouTube TV's got multi-view now, so we can put 3 games on one TV and just work around it. But yeah, I work a little bit too much.
So a grand total of potentially up to 12 games at once. That's 9.
I think 9.
9. Well, you get 4 on each screen, right?
Oh, is it 4? You might be right then.
I think so. I don't know. I'm just guessing. How do you divide the screen up not in 4, in 3 ways?
Yeah, no, then it would be 12. That is so much.
That's wild. That's overkill for even March Madness.
Facts.
Like I think what's the most games to put on March Madness? Like 5 or 6?
Yeah.
Anyways, okay. I also have to thank Celebrity Theaters. I'm sorry, the Spectre Sports Art. As y'all can see behind me, and I'm gonna minimize you, Zack, not because I'm not trying to minimize your impact for the show, but I do want to show off this awesome new Dylan Cruz artwork behind me. It is a really good detail-oriented piece, and the Tiger Stadium piece behind me. Our show, of course, is brought to you by Jordan Spector Art all year long, particularly the newest piece, 7. It is an incredibly detailed piece of work. You can see the puzzle piece on his arm. That is to represent his work with Cruz, helping disabled children come see baseball games. tons of good details on all his work. You can see the golden cleats, the fireworks from the championship celebration. You may recall the 2020 Smoke and Joe piece. Of course, we have that back here. Another awesome one of the best piece of arts I've ever seen, but of course, it's been around a while. And of course, we've got the Coach O Perfection, another one that I had a lot of input on, helped him figure up the memories in the trophy. I named it. Really cool stuff, man. Really good quality artwork. The link is in the description of this video. You can see his Bayou collection. There's a Drew Brees piece, the Tiger Stadium piece above me, which, by the way, that's a miniature version to fit this studio. I actually have a 5-foot version of this in my man cave right over there by me. So it is a beautiful piece. So y'all make sure to check that out. So there's 4 LSU pieces and a Drew Brees. Go check out the Bayou collection. Remember, this Dylan Cruz piece was actually purchased by Dylan's family. So it is hanging up in Dylan Cruz's actual man cave. So that I always think that that's like a particularly cool thing. The Joe Burrow thing is, of course, I don't know if Joe has a copy, but I know his parents do because they come on my show and show it off behind them. So the fact that these athletes hang these pictures up themselves in their own rooms and you can have the same thing they're hanging up of themselves, I've always thought that's particularly cool. Make sure to visit the link in the description of this video and check out the entire Bayou collection. If you do the checkout, remember to use TigerBait 10. You get 10% off your first purchase. You will not be disappointed with the quality of this artwork, guys. Go check it out. Let them know who sent you by using that promo code. All righty. Now that we got our bills paid for a while, we can continue talking our BK notes.
I need to get some of that artwork. It actually does look incredible.
I might actually hook you up with some just to hang behind you. Can you do that?
Yeah, I need something. Those are beautiful.
They're pretty dope. We'll talk about it. We'll line up logistics off air. But anyways, I have somewhere written down the actual players. All right, here we go. So unavailable Mason Smith. You mentioned that he was saying he was going to be questionable for this game anyways. There's the silver lining for you if you were looking for one of him. Obviously, I think the whole NCAA suspension of him is absolute just malarkey, bamboozled, hoodwinked. What's the rest of that Stephen
Led
A quote?
astray, run amok. I'm telling you, it's BS.
Wild.
We'll keep it PG, but yeah, very, very messed up. I don't even want to talk about it.
It's unbelievable. It just shows the disarray that the NCAA has in its operations. Of course, Glenn Guilbeau loved it. He had a all-time great bad ratio of a tweet that was seen about 250,000 times and got like 4 likes on it or something like that.
Impressive, to be honest. Like it was impressive how horrible that tweet went.
I don't think I've ever seen such a bad ratio. And I do think eventually like some Florida State fans got in there and gave it 12 likes or something. But imagine Tiger Stadium filled up and 7 people clap. Now imagine it fills up again and it's still 7 people clap. That's basically what happened to Glenn there. So Mason Smith out, Armani Goodwin doubtful, which I think that's very sad because the big knock on Armani Goodwin's been his ability to stay healthy. Yeah. Josh Williams probable. That's good news, right? Because he's been on a bike. And then Kimo Macanelli. How do you say that last name?
I think you killed that.
Macanelli?
I think you're good on that.
Look at me, all culturally versed and knowing how to say names and stuff. He's questionable, but he's a backup offensive lineman. What really stands out to me is, of course, Mason Smith was out. We already knew that. There's almost Armani Goodwin was not going to be a starter, and Chemo's not going to be a starter. So only one guy that was possibly going to be a starter, and he's probable. So he'll probably play. And any running back on this team calling them a starter is a little aggressive because
I feel good about where Josh Williams is from a health perspective. Though when we got to talk to him last week, he was basically saying like he should be good to go, and it was kind of like a precautionary thing while he was sidelined and working with the trainer one-on-one during most of fall camp, just getting his legs back underneath him. Didn't want to risk any like further injury or anything. So very limited, but for good reason. I'm excited to see how he plays on Sunday because I would be very, very surprised if it went in any other way.
Well, we got Van here a couple minutes early. Van, are you good? Can I bring you up a couple minutes early? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. All right, I'm going to bring him on early here. What's going on, Van?
What's up, guys?
Dude, I'm so excited to have you back on. You killed it last year, 9-3. I have one more BK note today, and we got the news already, but I'm glad you're here because I'll get you to react to it too. He, of course, talked about number 7 going to Will Campbell.
Yeah.
And number 18 going to Mekhi Wingo. Van, what do you think about those numbers going to those guys?
I like it. So most people are upset about this. Zach, it's good to meet you.
How's it go, man?
We haven't met before. Zach, as you get to know me, you'll realize that I'm not a traditionalist.
Uh-huh.
I'm here to shake things up.
I'm here for it.
I believe in tradition mixed with a healthy version of the now. I don't like quinoa in my gumbo. I'm a traditionalist about that. But at the same time, I do like new people making the gumbo. My mother makes it for years. Let my sister try it. It's okay with me. Okay. When I see Will Campbell wearing the number 7, there's a lot of people out there that go, hey, that's supposed to go to a skill position player.
Yep.
Somebody dazzling, electrifying, all of that stuff. We've been doing that for the last couple of years. Hasn't worked. How about we give it to a player that is a consistent playmaker, that is the most important player on the offensive side? And outside of Jayden Daniels, I could argue that that's Will Campbell. I'm with it. 18 is something that they normally always get right. And I think that they really got it right with this choice. Somebody who was a pleasant surprise for me last year. I expected to be good, but not quite as good as how they played. Brought a lot of joy to the Tigers. So I'm with it. Like, my brother was all up in arms. He was like, we're not going to get to see any of these moments with number 7 breaking the punt, going crazy, or making any of these really gaudy plays. But I liked it. It shows to me that BK has his eye on the program. You know, why did you guys have a problem with it? Where are we at on it? I liked it.
I feel pretty comfortable about it. I think it's going to be cool, wearing it on a patch and stuff. What you said is spot on, though, dude. Like,
yeah,
it's going to be weird seeing it on a patch. But other than that, he's consistent. And other than Jayden Daniels, you're right for the most part. From a playmaker perspective on offense, it's all him. So I have no problem with it. I think it's cool as hell, just kind of giving it to something different, shake it up, like you said. I think it's needed because number 7 obviously hasn't gone according to plan in the last couple of years. Would have been cool to see like a Malik Neighbors or something in that aspect. But, here we go. Will Campbell kind of embodies what it means. So I'm really cool with it. For 18, I'm kind of on the same page as you. Would have been cool to see Josh Williams potentially, but other than that, I really don't have anything to say. I think Mekhi Wingo is an excellent choice. Would have been cool for Josh Williams in my opinion, but I think you can't go wrong with either of the two, and he went with Wingo.
Okay, so here's my thoughts. I'm with Van. Shake up the gumbo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe instead of Tony's, put some slap your mama in the gumbo. Don't put tomatoes in the gumbo.
Never.
That's a travesty. And you know what? I'll go as far. Don't even eggs. Keep them out. Okay.
I'm
but
a
anyway,
New Orleans guy, so you're talking my language right now. We're on the same page, dude.
So if you put tomatoes in the gumbo, you ruin the gumbo. If you do too much to shake this tradition up, you ruin the tradition. I like the shake up, giving it to an offensive lineman. There is an argument that he's the best player on your team. He wants to be offensive lineman led. The shake up of making it a Louisiana guy, that's very interesting. I like it because you can kind of turn that into a recruiting angle for guys in Louisiana. Your top name guys say, hey, look, it's a tradition in this state. You come to Louisiana, you're the best player on this team from Louisiana. We're going to give you that number 7 jersey. I could see you in it. I don't think out-of-state guys quite dream of wearing that number 7 the same way that in-state guys do. And I think that that's shown up a bit because since Patrick Peterson, I think and he who shall not be named, Jonathan Giles, but
he ruined it.
He did. But hold up. He got it revoked mid-season. They put him at number 12. But all the guys outside of him have been from Louisiana. So that to me just speaks volumes as to what it means to the Louisiana guys. So I like this. The one downside is it is sad that we're not going to actually see that 7 jersey. 7's my favorite number. I wore 77 in high school because I was too fat to wear and play a position that could get number 7. So I love it. But we're not going to see that jersey this year. That's a shame. But mean, Will Campbell's absolutely deserving. I love Mekhi Wingo for the pick. Zach, have you ever you've interviewed Mekhi Wingo a few times, right?
Yeah, he's a fantastic person. That's why when like I'm saying it's like 1A, 1B, whether it was Josh Williams or Mekhi Wingo, you can't go wrong. So I think it's cool to give it to a defensive lineman and work from there. Kind of, BJ got it last year and keep moving on from there. So I can't complain.
I will say this, if it's okay, Preston.
Go for it.
I will say this: the Josh Williams choice is inspired.
Walk on scholarship. It's a cool story.
Walk on scholarship is one thing, and that's a huge part of his story. But the fact that he actually became a leader and a focal point. When I say a focal point, I mean he could run the ball, but he also just scrapped every blade of grass for the Tigers' success. I mean, he really embodies it. That is an inspired pick for it as well. I have to say that's a great one.
Yeah, I love Mekhi Wingo. I mean, talking to him, he's great. He's a guy who, similarly to Josh Williams, he outplays his talent level. I mean, he just plays with he has such a good motor and such good tick. He's only 6 foot 295, guys. Like he's not that big.
6 foot is extremely generous as well.
He's probably 5'11". Yeah, I mean, I'm taller than him. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So, and he's great. He's so smart, so great to talk to. He's an excellent pick. Josh Williams was another outstanding one. The one thing, why I mentioned the tomatoes in the gumbo, I felt like doing 2 18s. That's some tomatoes in the gumbo. I like 1 18.
Yeah.
Less is more. It diminishes the value. Even though this year, you had the 2 most deserving 18 candidates that I can remember in recent memory. I still like that you picked one and you went with him. And it's a great pick. Either one of those guys, I was going to give an A++ pick to. So that's my thought on it. I think BK's doing a good job of embracing that tradition. I'm going to get into real quick. I got one sponsor plug to get into real quick, and then we're going to go down by the schedule, and we're going to pick game by game by game. I talked to Zack before the show. He doesn't know what the record he's going to pick yet is, so he's going to figure out in about 30 seconds what his record is, like a fan's eyes.
2 games that I'm sitting there going back and forth on, and I think I made up my decision like midway through this thing.
I'm mostly joking, but he did say there's a little – I mean, I have some uncertainty, but – I kind of just decided I was going to make a decision even though there's that uncertainty, and I'll tell you all about that in a bit. But I do have to thank Celebrity Theaters first. Remember, they have weekly promotions going on all week in their Baton Rouge, Broussard, and Ruston locations. Monday is Senior Savings Day, $5 off for all patrons over the age of 55. I'm just going to say calling a 55 a senior, it's a little aggressive, but hey, we accept the savings where we can get it in this economy. Tuesday, Bargain Tuesday, discounted movie tickets and concessions for all. Wednesday is College Night, admission for college students after 5 p.m., $5. And the location has half off arcades all day long. Thursday, Baton Rouge location only, is Thirsty Thursday. And I was just telling Zach, the ability to drink an alcoholic beverage in a lazy boy while watching a movie, that just seems like the future to me. Like, I know we're mostly disappointed now that we've made it to the future. There's no flying cars, laundry machines don't fold your laundry for you yet. But, movie theaters, we really got it right with movie theaters. All right, so let's get into it. Here's the schedule. And guys, remember, please hit like on the show. Mike Scarborough does make fun of me when my shows get less likes than him, so make sure you hit like on the show. And this is going to be a bit of a jam-packed show. I'm trying to get us out on time this week. If you got a comment, you've seen I have not been able to get the comments like I usually do. Throw a super chat if you got something really good you want to say. I'll try to get to, or I will get to all the super chats, assuming y'all don't completely overwhelm me. All right, boys. What we've all been waiting for. Week 1. Real football, Florida State in Orlando. We'll start with Van. Does LSU get revenge on Florida State week 1?
31-25.
Tigers?
31-25 Tigers, we win. We're going to win this game. We are going to take the first quarter, feeling out process, everybody get a lather going. And as the game goes on, we're going to be a little bit too explosive, where the defense is going to play better than people think that it will. We're going to score enough points, 31-25, we're going to win. And this is going to be the game that sets the standard as we move on. This will be our worst performance. We'll get better from here.
Our worst performance, and you're beating a top 10 team. I like it. All right, Zach, what you got?
Yeah, I think ultimately LSU pulls this one off. What you and I were talking earlier, it's kind of like this is one of the ones where I was thinking to myself for a really long time, and it's unfortunate it's the first game, but I think LSU kind of gets it done. Special teams is improved. You're actually going to get some Harold Perkins on the field. You didn't really get that aspect of him in last year's season opener. So I think there are just a couple different factors that kind of control the pace here. Your offensive line, there's continuity that's developing there. You bring back that entire group. So I think at the end of the day, LSU gets the job done. It's going to be close. I think that spread's 2.5 right now. So I'm feeling really comfortable around that spot. A score, if I were to pick it for you, maybe 31-28, something like that. But it's going to be a tight game. I'm kind of on the same page as you, Van. I think we're going to be in that regard, but ultimately I think LSU gets it done. That's going to be a really good game, man. I'm super excited.
Florida State has some stars on this team. Okay, that quarterback there, Jordan Travis, is one of the best quarterbacks. He does some things better than Jayden Daniels. And he's right up there. I mean, if you're looking at your top 10 quarterbacks, usually you see those guys like 6 and 7 right next to each other. So we're talking about two of the best quarterbacks in the country. Jordan Travis puts some air under his balls and throws a touch pass very nicely. I'm hoping Jayden shows flashes of being that touch pass, but he's been mostly an underneath passer. The receiving core for Florida State, very good. And then, of course, you've got Verse, one of the best defensive linemen in the country. Fortunately, you've got Will Campbell, one of the best offensive linemen in the country.
That matchup is going to be phenomenal.
Oh,
Campbell
so
and Verse, that is
so
good.
Good.
Something to watch.
I love big boys in the trenches, man. I'll be watching that one a lot, but I think LSU will do its part. I think LSU is going to be markedly improved. We talked about the most improved position on this team is kick returner by a wide margin.
Anderson back there. So you got on the kick return is going to be Anderson and Jackson.
Yeah, and I think those are your two most explosive athletes. We went to practice for the scrimmage. Caleb Jackson, he's a freak. I think you went with your two most explosive athletes, which is a good thing because you don't really want to just get Greg Clayton back there and fair catch it and call it a day. This is LSU. You should be able to get better athletes than that. That was when we talked about the Frankenstein roster for LSU last year, where they really just tried their best to put it all together. Exhibit A. All right, Don Rourke putting his thing up there. Florida State 42-34. He must be a Florida State fan because he paid us $20. He paid us $20 to pick Florida State.
I hope it was worth it.
Worth it. I'm going. I think Vegas nailed this game. I'm going 28-25. I'm taking LSU and the 2.5. I guess I'm taking. Yeah, I'm taking LSU minus 2.5, but barely. 28-25. I think LSU gets that revenge, and I think Florida State's going to win the ACC this year. I think this is going to be a really big win. Of course, Florida State's probably ever so slightly behind Clemson for that, but that's not really an aggressive thing. But I think toward the end of the year, as LSU pushes for a playoff spot, I think this will be a signature win that they'll need to push out there. All right, Grambling State, what you got, Van?
170 to -3, LSU will win this game. The only chance Grambling has is if the ghost of Eddie Robinson suits up.
Yeah.
Game. To be honest with you, I think Jayden will come out. He'll play the first 35 seconds of the game, and then I want to see what Nuss can do.
Yeah.
I want to see Nussmeier. And look, if you're Garrett, it's coming to you. I like you. I like the cut of your jib, young man. LSU wins big. It's going to be a fun weekend in Baton Rouge. I'm going to be there. All right, across town. Southern is, I think, playing Jackson State. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a huge weekend in Baton Rouge. I'm not sure how I'm going to be sober. I'm almost certain I won't be.
No shot.
It's there. Mama, daddy, your boy's coming home. But yeah.
Am I remembering correctly? You're a Southern alumni. Is that right?
Southern alumni. Yes.
Okay.
Southern,
Who did you root for last year?
In the game?
Yeah, LSU Southern.
Okay. So let's have a conversation.
Right now or off air?
It's on air. So my brother went to LSU. Okay, my father went to Southern.
Mm-hmm. That's tough.
I went to Southern. Here's the deal. It's all about time and place.
Mhm.
Okay. Southern, I root for like with all of my heart when they're playing the Southern type games. LSU, different standard of football.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if it happens inside of Tiger Stadium, very serious. It's not that I wasn't rooting for Southern, but I'm a compassionate rooter when it comes to that level of talent difference. So look, love Southern, love the swag, a Jaguar through and through, but I've been going to every single LSU game since I was a kid. So that's kind of but yeah, I'm happy actually. I should be able to say this. I'm happy that Grambling gets to come in. We kind of took our foot off the gas last year against Southern. We don't need to do that with Grambling. Actually, we can leave the starters in the whole game. Grind them up into a fine black and gold paste, and then by the time the Bayou Classic comes, Southern can pick at their carcass.
Okay. Well, Van, it's okay. You're divided in your household. At least you're not like Zack and you went to ULL. You know.
Chill.
Zack.
We'll talk about it off air. Don't do me, please. Don't do this to me live.
No, he's a good guy.
Zack, where you guys dusting the crawfish over there?
Oh,
I'm from New Orleans.
Tomatoes in the gumbo. That's worse.
I know better.
You guys dusting the crawfish.
I'm from New Orleans. Don't
see. Okay. See what I'm saying? I'm vouching for the guy. He went to ULL, but he's got his head screwed on right. I promise you, man.
On the side of the basin.
I'm from New Orleans. I know better.
They're dusting the crawfish at ULL.
That was inexcusable. Inexcusable. I can't vouch. But yeah, no. Trust me. I get it.
By the way, that part of the state has the best food in the entire state. I'm not even tripping, but I'm just like, that was shocking. I showed that to my mom.
That was horrible. That blew up so bad. Oh my gosh, that was.
I love teasing the Lafayette guys because my wife's family's from Lafayette. My father had a radio show in Lafayette for many years. Van, I tease him. I say on this show it's ULL because when I grew up and my father-in-law would let me go on his radio show, he said, Preston, if you come on, it's UL, okay?
UL.
So it's my show now. We say ULL.
It's such a debate, man. It gets so hot with that.
Okay.
Back to business.
Grambling State. I'm gonna jump and then let Zack go. I think 42-13. I think get Jayden Daniels out of there. 42-13. I think they're going to take the gas off. It's an in-state team. You want them to not get embarrassed. I think LSU takes care of business. I think this is the kind of game where Jayden Daniels will look elite. He'll do something like 12 of 12 for 4 touchdowns, and then they'll pull him out. Then Nussmeier's going to go in. And remember a year ago, on almost this exact same spot, Nussmeier looked atrocious against Southern. I think he's going to get a good redemption and look like a leader. I think Ricky Collins is going to get his first action in this. I'm excited to see him, and he's looked like a true freshman in camp. I would really like to see him get, his feet wet and get to play out there and hopefully play well. Mason Smith, I want him in there every single snap for this game. He played 10 football games in his career. I want him getting as much experience as he can because next week is Mississippi State. And we'll get to that in a second. Zach, what you got?
Yeah, I think this is going to be one where it's like 56-10. And I think this is where you're going to see a lot of the true freshmen get a lot of action here. I want to see what Sheldon Sampson can get going. I want to see Caleb Jackson get a lot of reps too. It's a given that Nussmeier pops into this game and shines. This is one where he's going to need to get a lot of reps under his belt. The Mason Smith take is perfect. He has not played. There's just no volume when it comes to Mason Smith. So I think this will be a game for him to get his feet wet, prepare for some SEC games, and ultimately LSU pulls it off around 56-10 is what I'm feeling. But it's going to be a blowout, and you're going to let your true freshmen, your second and third stringers shine. I'd love to see Ricky Collins get into that game as well. But let Nussmeier get some run and kind of work from there. I want to see what the true freshman receivers can do as well, whether it's Kyle Parker, Sheldon Sampson. I want to see those guys get some volume under their belt as well early.
17 career tackles for Mason Smith. I'm hoping he adds to that total for Grambling State by a good bit. Mississippi State. So we all know Mike Leach. Rest in peace, one of my favorite coaches of all time, passed away right before the bowl game last year. They do bring back 20 starters. Yeah. And they bring back Will Rogers, who is statistically the most accomplished quarterback in the SEC. He took a bit of a step back last year, statistically speaking, which isn't saying much because, I mean, he had like 4,500 yards the year before. He was an absolute machine. But he's coming back this year for his, I think this is his 17th year in college. He'll be back, 20 starters back, but you replace Mike Leach with Zach Arnett. He says he's going to run a similar offense, but we've seen, new faces try to run the same offense. It usually doesn't work out as well. Do we think that they can trip you up? It's an 11 a.m. kickoff in Starkville. Van, does Mississippi State trip up LSU?
This is going to be a tough game. This is going to be a game not unlike last year's game, in that it's going to be a game where LSU outmuscles Mississippi State. Out of the course of snaps, you're going to see some attrition set in, and we're just a deeper team with better athletes, and we're going to make some plays when they're breathing a little heavy that are going to pull this game out. But for many parts of this game in the first and second quarter, you're going to see a nervous fan base because Mississippi State is going to compete in this game early. Having said that, I still think it's a game that we win 23-13. We win 10 points, something like that. I'm telling you guys, I think you're going to see some defensive performances out of LSU that are a little better than people think that they're going to be. And this is going to be one of them where we're going to be able to get pressure on Will Rogers, where we were able to get pressure on him last year. He was clearly rattled. So I don't think they're going to be able to score a ton of points. I think that we might have an off day offensively, like maybe kind of a up and down game right there. But I think it's 23-13 or 24-14 or something like that. LSU gets it done. We're going to win, but it's not going to be the finest performance that we have.
Zach?
Yeah, I'm on the exact same page as you, just because I think Rogers is a dog. And with that being said, LSU secondary is what's kind of like the shaky point of this defense. So when you look at like kind of an air raid type offense and the select playmakers that they have on the outside paired with Rogers, it could be a recipe for disaster in that sense, just because they could tear up the secondary if LSU's not looking sharp by week 3. I think ultimately LSU wins 27-17, gets the job done, but I think it's going to be a very hard-fought game. I think the first 2 quarters, like you said, are going to be a dogfight where you kind of go into halftime with some like nerves, jitters in your stomach, but LSU's going to get it done. The secondary needs to come to play. I need to see Zy Alexander and Deuce Chestnut put in some work because, for the most part, they've just been inconsistent. And it's a small sample size of fall camp, of course, but by week 3, I'm hoping that they have the kind of like engine rolling in that aspect. So secondary gets some work done, pull it out 27-17.
Can I say something about this as well as Mississippi State's offense?
Hit me.
I think it's a good game for the secondary guys to really batten down the hatches and get ready for it, because
just get tuned. Just get more tuned.
Get tuned, right? Get some confidence going, because with this air raid, you're gonna have to cover sideline to sideline because
precisely
they don't play as much of a vertical game when you watch the air raid that Mike Leach runs as people think. So you got to cover. So they're going to be an opportunity for guys to play, within the boundaries and really be on top of some short stuff. If they tackle surely and they do all of that stuff, it's a chance to get better in the defensive secondary, I think.
Yeah,
I love this as an SEC opener. It's going to be a great tune-up. And by the way, it's very possible that your 2 biggest challenges to the secondary will be your first 2 Power 5 games, Mississippi State and Florida State. Now, there's an argument Ole Miss, and who the hell knows what Alabama's going to end up doing with their quarterback. They didn't put out a depth chart today, so that was interesting. But I think LSU's going to go down 10-0. 14 zip, something like that, right? I think that Will Rogers is going to come out hot. We know LSU's history in these 11 a.m. kickoffs. It's going to be very, very hot, and it's on the road. But then I think Jayden Daniels is going to take a shot of bourbon on the sideline. He's going to get the boys fired up. He's going to get rocking and rolling and cooking. And I think the good guys win something like 30-21, right? It's going to be one of those games where the haters, say screenshot the scoreboard early on, but it's a long football game. And we saw last year, Brian Kelly did a very good job with in-game adjustments. There was a lot of games where you saw the other team actually had a better roster and more talent than LSU last year. they went down early, and the coaching were able to make adjustments and out-coach the other team down the stretch. I'm not saying Mississippi State has more talent than LSU because they don't. This year, LSU's got there's only two teams with the kind of talent LSU has on its roster that LSU is going to play. I think LSU will take care of business. I just think those 11 a.m. kickoffs are funky. I've been watching them for a long time. I feel funky when I'm at them. The team feels funky. It's just weird. So we all have LSU 3-0, and then LSU takes on Arkansas. This one's at home. Hopefully it will not be 900 degrees and 11 a.m. They haven't announced that yet, but we will hear it soon enough. Van, do you think Arkansas gives LSU a run for its money for second year in a row?
No, I don't. I think it's going to be a competitive game, but I think we've learned a lot from last year's game. I think this game, Perkins might have 17 sacks in one game. Look, I personally think that there were a lot of factors that went into how close the game was last year. We'll say this. Having their QB back.
KJ, yeah, he's good.
He's a dog.
That's a good player.
Yeah.
That's one of the best players in the SEC. And I expect him to have a pretty big year. However, I at home here in Baton Rouge, I think we're going to come in loose. We're going to come in a little battle tested from Mississippi State. We're going to figure some things out in that game. And I think LSU wins that game against Arkansas by 2 touchdowns.
Good pick. I'm going to put up a super chat real quick. American Patriot, who always watches the show. Thank you, gentlemen. Great show. Thank you for being a part of our show every single week, American Patriot. You're a great follower and subscriber to have. I appreciate your support. I'll skip Zack and we'll go back to Zack, but I'm going to just go ahead and go since I'm already talking. Remember, Greg Brooks played for Arkansas. This is a big game for him. He had an incredible turnover last year in this game. I think Greg Brooks is someone to watch out. I think he's going to probably ball out again. And I don't think this game's particularly close. It's at Tiger Stadium. They're going to be playing with a lot of pride. They're going to be hyped up after 3-0 and everything's looking ahead. And I think they're going to remember how embarrassed they were last year when they barely beat Arkansas. And I think they're going to beat the snot out of them, 20 points or so. What you say, Zack?
Yeah, no, I mean, for the most part, I think it's just going to be a completely different environment. You're going to be in Death Valley. Air's a little bit different there. It's going to be a home crowd. It's going to be fired up. And I think you're just going to have a completely different scheme for the most part. I'm really intrigued to see how the defense reacts to KJ Jefferson. Like I was saying a minute ago, he's a dog, man. He can throw the ball. He's a tank when he utilizes his legs as well. So I think everything about that team is really interesting. But I think LSU kind of comes out. I was going to say like 35-17. They get it done by nearly 20 points. And it's going to be one where a lot of fans are considering, maybe Arkansas could get it done. But I just don't see it happening in that way.
Then we go to Ole Miss on the road. Have they determined who the starter? Doesn't Spencer Sanders have some eligibility issues or something going on, Zack? I assume you know what's going on there.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure about the eligibility thing, but I'm pretty sure Jackson Dart's going to be the guy that they roll with.
Yeah, they're going to roll with him again.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's a young kid. He looked good at times. That Lane Kiffin offense is always something to worry about. Last year, LSU beat the dog snot out of them, and a game where it really showed what LSU's potential was under Brian Kelly. Some would argue it was a coming out party because that was a predecessor to, of course, LSU's big win over Alabama last year. I believe that if there's a game you're third most likely to lose, that's the one. Because everybody talks about Bama, Florida State. That's what, all the focus is going on off season. If there's a third game you could lose, I think that's the most likely to lose. It's at Ole Miss. And, of course, Ole Miss remembers getting embarrassed last year. Lane Kiffin, good coach. I'm not going to buy into all that. I do think LSU takes care of business. Not by a ton. I think LSU wins by one score. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. It'll be like, 42-35, something like that. Van, what you say?
Almost the exact same read. This is going to be the game where the secondary struggles. And it won't be because Ole Miss has great talent on the perimeter. It will be because of scheme. It'll be because Kiffin is a fantastic play caller. He's one of the smartest minds out there. and he'll figure out how to make our guys play and guard in space. And he'll throw some big time 50-50 balls that our guys will have to make plays on. And I think early on we're not going to really make the plays. I think Kiffin is the type of coach that knows how to take advantage of some weaknesses that we have in the defense. Having said that, they don't have enough talent to beat LSU. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a stressful game, but it's going to be a game that we figure out a way to win, because Ole Miss is kind of a program in flux right now. Jackson Dart is a guy that, to be honest with you, it doesn't seem like they quite believe in. He had a great season for part of the year last year.
Right.
But they desperately wanted Spencer.
You bring in 2 transfers, yeah.
Yeah, they definitely.
And Walker Howard.
That would be a nightmare.
Yeah. By the way, I think Walker Howard will eventually be a nightmare for LSU.
Yeah.
I don't think he's quite there yet, because if he was there, he would have won the starting position. But I do think he will be a nightmare. What's sad about it is that he transferred out because he was going to be third string here at LSU, and now he's third string at Ole Miss. And, you kind of restart that development clock of, hey,
I'm crazy enough to watch a lot of the other SEC coverage on YouTube and like around the conference. They're not super duper high on him right now. I mean, he just got there and he's still learning everything, but the rumblings you hear out of camp is not like he's blown anybody's socks off. By the way, I wish all the best for Walker and everything. Like, seriously, all jokes aside. So, but I don't think he's close to really being to challenging. Unless, Zach, you have some different intel. Unless you heard something differently.
He's a little thin and small at this point. He needs to put on some muscle mass. Of course, when he was at not LCA, what was the school he went to? St. Thomas More. He got the flu a couple times and like really lost like a lot of muscle mass. So he went into college a little thin, and he's still trying to play catch up from that. So he needs to put on some weight. We're talking about a quarterback who's about 6'1". He's a little guy. He needs to put on that muscle. I think take some time. I think he'll eventually get it, but we'll see. Zach, what's your pick for Ole Miss game?
I think we're talking about the quarterbacks almost a little bit too much, and we're kind of like overlooking Quinshon Judkins. I mean, he's the absolute real deal at running back. That dude he's a menace, and he's powerful, and he showed that last season. So, I mean, that's somebody who I'm sitting there and circling on that chart just because of what he's capable of. And, he can kind of catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield and turn it upfield when you need him to, but he's a power back. And once he gets an open space, he kind of moves pretty quickly for a lower body strength guy. So I'm circling Quinshon Judkins. I want to see how LSU contains him, and ultimately they're going to contain him. I think this game does run it up to about a 42-37 LSU wins, but I think you need to watch out for that run game of Ole Miss, because it can be powerful at times. And Kiffin's a guy who can do a balanced attack when he truly wants to, and he's going to have to do that to keep it close against LSU. But as close as it could be, I think LSU wins it by 5, 42-37.
So we're all on the same page. We're all at 5-0 at this point. LSU has to go to Missouri. That was their East draw this year. I think of the teams you can draw in the East, it's pretty peaceful, I'd say. So that's one of the reasons I like LSU's schedule. The way I keep on saying it is, yes, it's a tough schedule, but it's as manageable as it gets if you're LSU. You're going to play one marquee out of conference game every year, and you're going to get Florida every year. You're going to get Bama every year. And then you draw a team out of the East. Who do you get? That's like rolling the die. And I think LSU got a favorable roll with Missouri, but you do have to go to Columbia, a place that I think you've only been to once since they joined the conference. I was on a Tuscaloosa radio show this week doing an LSU preview, and they asked me about the new scheduling in the SEC. And I said, well, can it get any worse than what we have right now? This is an embarrassment that you only get one rotating SEC East opponent. That being said, I do think Missouri is a respectable team. I think their team slotted for a hot start. I looked at their schedule. They're a team that could start 5-0. They don't play too many big name teams early on. I think LSU takes care of business pretty easily here. I think this is a good, 2-score victory. I think something to the effect of 34-20. What do you think, Van?
Missouri was a scrappy team last year. They were in a couple of close games.
Georgia, they almost beat Georgia.
Almost beat Georgia. I think they were in a really close one with Auburn too, if I
Is that the one they had the chunky kicker that was like waltzing all over the field? Do I have that right?
Yeah. So they're a scrappy team. I mean, this isn't going to be a close game, but I just wanted to say shout out to Missouri. Like
you had us in the first half. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah. I mean, by the time we get into this game at 5-0, we'll have a pretty good understanding of what our identity is. I think the team will be starting to crest by this point, starting to really get into a rhythm. I think this is like a 30-10 type joint. I give them a lot of credit because it's an SEC team, but I don't see us really having very much trouble with Missouri even in Columbia.
I agree. And Zach, you think are you going to go against the grain here?
I mean, I agree, Van. I like what you said there. I think at this point in the season, you're going to know what your identity is, and I think it's going to be a game where you don't necessarily blow them out the water, but a 31-10 score is kind of what I'm feeling on that front too. I think your receiver is going to be hitting their stride, and Jayden Daniels is going to be comfortable. You might see a couple youngsters shine as well, but this is going to be one where I'm feeling extremely comfortable about LSU, despite Missouri probably coming into this game riding a high, probably being 4-5-0. So I think LSU shuts them down and gets the job done without a doubt.
So we've reached the halfway mark of our schedule. 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. We all agree undefeated. Obviously, there's some tough stretches in there, but I think we're all on the same page. We do have a super chat from Spider-Man. Any concerns about LSU on offense with the way a few teams shut them down last year? Arkansas, UGA, Texas A&M. Yeah, there were moments where the offense was regressed. A lot of my prediction is based on Jayden Daniels taking that step forward, which for most part this offseason we've seen him. I have faith in Brian Kelly as a coach to develop a quarterback. I think he's going to have like a 3,500-yard passing season. He's going to be a little less happy-footed. He's only going to take off when it's wide open or, the play is absolutely broken down, and I think he's going to be an improved player. This is also based on if he doesn't take that step forward, Nussmeier's right there. And Nussmeier, I think, is plenty capable to get this offense rocking and rolling the way it needs to. So I think ultimately my faith in the offense improving is based on the fact that I think you have two quarterbacks who have improved and two quarterbacks capable of leading this offense. And I think the first one will get it done, but if he doesn't, you got another guy. Y'all two mostly agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think you go as far as Jayden Daniels goes, and I was saying that a couple minutes ago as well. I think he's going to take that next step. And we talk about, Brian Kelly and his developmental aspect, but quarterback coach Joe Sloan is incredible at his job. And I think, working side by side through a full offseason, Jayden Daniels and Joe Sloan working together, I think that's going to be, all the difference. Jayden kind of came in during spring ball last year and was thrown into the fire and, won the job and did everything in that regard. But now I think you're looking at a complete offseason with Joe Sloan and, obviously Brian Kelly, but you're sitting there working day by day in the film room with Joe Sloan and going by that. So I think Jayden Daniels does take that next step. I think Joe Sloan plays a key factor in Jayden Daniels reaching that next step. And to answer the question, concern-wise, I can't really say that there's a concern. I'm excited to see what happens with Jayden Daniels, but that's what's important to me is taking that next step. And I think Joe Sloan's going to allow Jayden to do just that.
Something I heard BK say a couple of days ago about the importance of getting the ball into the hands of the playmakers and about how us as a fan base, we want to see a vertical passing game and we want to see big plays. We want to see all of that. And that's, of course, incredibly important. But with the talented guys that we have in the wide receiver room, maybe the best wide receiver room in the entire country, certainly in the conference.
Ohio State. I'm going to throw them out there.
Well, they maybe. So Ohio State
but it's up there.
It's in the conversation. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
It has a fantastic room. But I think that you're going to see, to Zach's point, the game's called a little bit differently, and Jayden's confidence in some of the easier throws that soften up defenses be executed a little bit better. And I think that's going to make him a little bit better of a quarterback. And I also think he has some healthy, nourishing competition, like Zach said, behind him. And he knows that the leash isn't short, but it's not eternal. You need to play well.
No doubt. All right, guys, we've got one last set of ads before we get to the second half of our schedule here. I got to thank Alumni Hall for supporting our show tonight. Tiger fans, when you want to show your LSU pride, you know just where to go. Alumni Hall is your ultimate shopping experience. The best selection of apparel for the whole family: Nike, Nike Golf, Champion, Columbia, Peter Millar, Southern Tide, hats, Yeti gifts, and accessories. LSU students and faculty and military get 10% off in store every day, and you can earn cash back with their Hall Pass rewards. Alumni Hall, located in Perkins Row, or anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Tiger fans shop. And of course, we're also brought to you by Celebrity Theaters, our new title sponsor of the show this year. All Celebrity Theaters locations house 8 to 10 auditoriums. Whether you're interested in hosting a birthday party, private movie screening, corporate meeting, or arcade party, we have the perfect facility to fit your needs. Celebrity Theaters is proud to offer birthday packages for children of all ages. Let us handle everything from movies to entertainment, setup, and cleanup. For more information or to book your party online, visit celebritytheaters.com/events, or you can email them events@celebritytheaters.com. That information is available in the bio in the description of this video. Oh, oops, come down. All right, and thank you to all the sponsors who make this show possible. I really appreciate their support throughout the years. So moving on, we're going to scroll down here to the second half. Auburn. New coach, Hugh Freeze, who we know what he did at Ole Miss during his time there. Maybe he's decided to turn a new leaf and stop playing around with the burner phones and girls on that. Auburn was picked last in the West. Do we think Hugh Freeze shockingly turns this around and somehow comes to Baton Rouge and pulls an upset over a 6-0 LSU van?
No. He will turn it around, because he's a quality coach, but he's going to take his lumps this year. Auburn is an interesting team in that it's one of the games to where I'm always like, you know what I mean? It seems like there's always, even in the year where we were, the greatest team I've ever seen, that Auburn game was a tougher game. So there's just a lot of pride that goes along with this. I do not think that this game is going to be one of those games. I don't think it's going to be a runaway, but I think it's going to be a game where LSU is pretty much in control for the entire game. I'm looking at it at something like 30-14, around that situation, 30-17, maybe LSU. But I don't think it'll be a game where there are very many tense moments. And that's with all due respect to Hugh Freeze, who I think is a fantastic coach.
I concur. I think LSU really is going to start clicking at a new level at this point. I think LSU flexes its muscles 42-14, something like that, like big, impressive win. And I think it's not, I think it's just going to be one of those days where everything goes wrong for Auburn. I think it's a veteran team at LSU, lots of experience. I think the ball's just going to roll into their corner. And I think things go right, and then LSU is going to get a lot of hype being 7-0. Zach, what you say?
I love what Hugh Freeze is doing with that program. Let me just get that out the way. I think what he's doing on the recruiting trail is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's crushing it. I mean, there's no other way around it. He's going to be a force on the recruiting trail for some time. But to that point, it's going to take some time for him to get the wheels going on that Auburn program. And I do not think that this is a year where they march into Death Valley and do anything. I think this is an LSU win, 34-17. It's not too crazy, not too far-fetched. I think you come home and you take it by 17, but I just don't see them doing anything this year. And like Van said, no disrespect to Hugh Freeze at all, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get the wheels going on that program, and he's certainly doing that on the recruiting trail. For the foreseeable future, they'll be a force, but it will not be right now.
Now, typically in this day and age, you can turn around a program quicker than you used to be able to. If Brian Kelly had taken the LSU job the way that roster was in 2010, LSU would have won 6 games last year. But he got it in 2022. And by the way, that's with him being a good coach. That's with him doing all the right things, right? But in 2022, he was able to hit the transfer portal, bring in a guy like a Jayden Daniels, and really get rolling. Can I
say something real quick?
Yeah.
I think the difference was, though, when you look at it with BK, everything that you said is true. The cupboard wasn't quite as bare. I mean, there were some places where the cupboard was really bare, but the cupboard wasn't quite as bare as I think that we thought it was. And we did have some really impactful guys coming in.
Oh, yeah.
We had Harold Perkins coming in. We had Will Campbell coming in. We had Walker Howard coming in. So I don't know. I don't follow Auburn on the recruiting trail and the guys they were able to target in the portal as much. I don't know if they have that same thing. And I do know certainly last year there wasn't just the foundation of talent. It might take him a little bit longer. He'll do it. Hugh Freeze is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Like Hugh Freeze will be the problem going forward, even when Nick Saban starts to kind of get a little decline.
Yeah.
He's going to be a problem. It's just not going to happen next year.
Well said.
And worth noting, Auburn had the 19th ranked recruiting class last year, which is like good, but understand Brian Kelly wants you, and he had the 5th ranked transfer portal class last year, which was also good for Auburn. But Brian Kelly had, I think, the 2nd highest recruiting class, transfer class in 2023. And he had a decent recruiting, like 15. Once you combine the two together, it was like the 5th most talent that he brought in the country. It was a lot of talent. Auburn brought in good talent. It wasn't the level that Brian Kelly brought in 2022. Another big thing is one of the big transfer portal guys they brought in that they needed, and this guy was slotted to be a starter. And Auburn got him to come over. They, talked to him about NIL deals he could get and stuff like that. DeMario Tolan won't be playing for Auburn, and they needed him real bad. So that's another part of it. I just think Auburn's going to be more of he'll get there, but not this year. I think last in the West is about right for Auburn this year.
And this 2024 recruiting class that they had, like, that's what I'm saying for the future. Like, they're going to be – he's getting some guys in the 2024 class. 2023 wasn't – he just got there. Like, he didn't really get to set the tone. But for the future, I'm excited to see what they can do.
And Auburn's a job where there's more potential at Auburn than like a school like Ole Miss. There just is. More resources.
1 second, guys. I got to go let somebody in, okay? 1 second.
Okay, go for it. We'll buy you some time here. Okay, so Auburn's a school with plenty of resources. They've won championships. They've won the West. They've had a Heisman winner, whereas Ole Miss has never really broken into that echelon in our lifetime. And it's, Mississippi, there's some talent, there's some resources there. I do not think it's quite the same as what Auburn has. Of course, the big knock on Auburn is boosters that really like to get their hands all over the program, but they're boosters with a lot of money, so that, pros and cons. And of course, you are overshadowed by Alabama, and you have to split that in-state talent with Alabama.
Exactly.
So that's rough. All right, we'll transition into Army. I don't know how much time we can buy Van on Army. Maybe we'll come back and get Army and Alabama on him. The biggest piece of analysis I can give you for this game, they run the triple option, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to waste your time talking about the actual Army team. What I love, and I mean love with capital LOVE about this game, it's right before the bye week against Alabama. LSU gets a tune-up game playing Army. Don't get guys hurt. Get some rest in the second half. This is not like Mason Smith has his reps now. Get him out of there in the second quarter if you can, okay? While LSU plays Army at home, Alabama will be hosting Tennessee, who Joe Milton, Cannon Orm. I love that Alabama 2 weeks before the LSU game will be giving it all they got against Tennessee, while LSU is, doing rock, paper, scissors to see who gets the go route against Army. I mean, that's incredible. LSU has gotten, it seems like any advantage LSU gets in that Alabama LSU series, it seems like Alabama is doing work to also get that advantage or get more of an advantage. We've talked for years about how LSU's gotten screwed with the Florida matchup. Florida's been so good over the years versus Bama with Tennessee, who's been struggling. Well, not anymore. You wanted Tennessee. You got Tennessee, and they're back, but now you're stuck with them because they're one of your 3 permanents. Love the karma coming back Nick Saban's way. LSU blasts Army, I don't know, 52-3, something like that. Van, what you say for Army?
What I want to say to Army is I appreciate your service and the future leaders of the American military.
Damn, he outshined me. What a good take.
That's
Damn.
The only thing I want to say is Shout out to everybody over at Fort Polk, and shout out to all of that,
Yes.
everyone. It's not going to happen, but we appreciate you guys. Go out there and represent this country honorably. But in Tiger Stadium, we're going to drink and watch it happen.
Yeah.
Wow. It's not going to go, but we appreciate you guys.
And anybody who's watching who's a veteran or currently active military, I just want to take a minute to thank you for your service to our country, because
Right.
you know all this is only possible because of the fight you fight. Zach, what you say?
Just gonna piggyback off what Van said. Completely agreed. But it's just not. It's not gonna happen. I'd probably say 42-10, man. And that's really that. No need for me to ramble on at all. I think LSU gets it done, 42-10, something around that area, and you move on. Bye week, and then you get to Bama, where this is where it gets interesting. I think for all three of us, this will be a really interesting talk.
Bye week and then Bama, and this is the one we're gonna probably park ourselves here a little bit here before we cruise on to the end. Bama, on paper, Alabama's a 9-3 football team right now. Now, I'm not saying this is end of the dynasty. I'm just telling you, if you look at the roster, the receiving core is not what we're used to. Like, who's the number one receiver? Jermaine Burton?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not – I mean, you realize, like, we saw a Bama receiving core with, like, a Heisman winner and 4 first-round draft picks at the same – Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith. Who's the guy for the Dolphins? Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not that type of Alabama roster. And we don't know who their quarterback is, and none of them really look good. There's a lot of people kind of casually hitting the panic button in Tuscaloosa right now. When was the last time we saw a top 5 team where you going into their season, you had no idea who their quarterback was? Not, well, there's a new guy. It's like Tyler Buckner, Jalen Milroe. We don't know. But Bama is one of those teams where I'll believe it when I see it. If you think Nick Saban is cooked, go look at that recruiting class he just signed. It's number 1 in the country, and it's not particularly close. There's an argument that as it's coming in, not like evaluating how they actually turn it out, but on paper, what you're actually seeing, that class with the amount of 5 stars they brought in, it might be the most talented class they've ever brought to Alabama. And we all know the gravity of that. You think Saban's done? You think Saban's cooked? No, he's cooking. I think Saban is going to have a team. I've seen Saban win national championships with a running back at quarterback. Maybe I have beaten wife syndrome, as Mike calls it, but I will believe that Alabama is bad when I actually see it on the field. I think this is a tough one. They're going to want revenge. Nick Saban is good in revenge games. I think this is the one where LSU trips up. And I think it's going to be a really close, hard-fought game. I think Alabama's probably already going to have a loss because they're going to play Tennessee and Texas going into this. They'll probably lose to Tennessee. And then they're going to be real hungry for a win. They're going to need it if they want to win the West. I think it's going to be a very good game, a game that we remember for a long time. I do think LSU trips up on the road, and that they drop to, I guess that puts them at, was that 8-1? Van, what you say?
I've been thinking about it since you reached out to have me on the show. I'm gonna zag. We're gonna get to it. This is not going to be the one that we're going to lose. Look, Alabama has talent everywhere. They do. We know that. But in the difference-making positions that they need to have talent at this year, if you weren't going to have an established quarterback, and look, I know they got the athlete. I know they brought in the kid from Notre Dame. I know they got the kid from Zachary. He'll be a freshman that year, right?
Mm-hmm. Eli Holstein.
So here's the thing about him.
Watch out for him, by the way. He's got talent.
He's got talent.
I've seen him in person. He's. You think Arch Manning was talented? Eli Holstein mops the floor with him in terms of quarterbacking talent.
Can I give you guys, and this is a kid that we're talking about, so I'm not trying to be a jerk. Can I give you guys a take that somebody that saw him at Elite 11, that got back?
Talking about Eli?
Eli Holstein, right?
Okay, yeah, go for it. I don't mind Eli Holstein.
They said he had mechanics that weren't fixable.
Interesting.
And that he should play H-back right away. And by the way, and by the way, that is not what I am saying about the kid. I don't even have it like
Yeah.
that. Evaluate quarterbacks at this level. If I told you the guy who said this, you'd be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. But like he said, he has mechanics that aren't fixable, and that he basically switch positions. I got 30 acres in Zachary. I am rooting for anybody that comes from this, even if you don't pick LSU, whatever. I'm rooting for him. I'm saying I don't know if that's going to be the answer right away at quarterback. I'm going to Zack, not to filibuster. I'm going to Zack here. LSU's going to win this game. It is it's going to be a very tough game, but I just think at the positions where it matters, if you didn't have a great quarterback, I would say that you needed really great difference makers on the perimeter to make up for that. I don't think they have that. I think the defense is going to be pretty nasty, but I don't see any reason right now, unless they figure something else out in their schedule, which I have no reason to believe that they will, unless somebody emerges. I don't have any reason to believe that they'll beat LSU. I think LSU wins the game 25-17 or something like that. But if I'm going to be wrong, nobody agrees with me. No one agrees with me. Everyone has marked this down as a loss. I don't see it. I
don't know that I necessarily disagree. I think LSU is going to go 1-1 in Florida State and Bama because those are two tough to win games. And I think on paper, LSU is the better football team than Bama. But I just think that sometimes better football teams don't win. True. And I also think that on paper, it's only on paper until we see them on field. And my history with Nick Saban is Tom Brady. When I will believe that a team quarterback by Tom Brady is bad when I see it, and it's bad. A team with Nick Saban coached, I will believe it's not a contender when I see it's not a contender. And since 2008, since Zack Nagy was probably in like second grade or something like that, I don't know. What were you? I mean, since 2008. He's been a contender. So I'll believe it when I see it. And if I have to pick one of those two as a loss, I'm going Bama. I don't necessarily disagree with you. All right, Zach, what you got?
Yeah, I'm kind of like the tiebreaker here. And I'm on the same page as you, Preston. Like you split Florida State and Alabama, in my opinion. One of the two, they're just really tough games. And I'm going to say that this is the one where it gets tripped up. And there's just a couple of reasons why. We're sitting here kind of talking about like the wide receivers and how Burton's kind of like their number one guy. And we're kind of like their only main weapon on the outside in that aspect. But I'm looking at Jason McClellan, their running back, and he's an all-purpose back. He's super talented, and he's kind of a guy, in my opinion, who gets swept under the rug. Quinshon Judkins is a guy who shines, and all-SEC guy, and he's that guy. But McClellan's somebody who I'm not really overlooking at all. He's gonna be a difference maker in this game, and it's gonna come down to the defensive line kind of handling business. And I think it's gonna be a battle of the trenches in this one. And I'm intrigued to see what happens with McClellan. He's a unit, and he's going to be a big force in this game. And I think at the end of the day, LSU goes into Tuscaloosa, and it's a revenge game for Nick Saban. It's more than just what happens in between the lines. It's something that he's doing. He's game playing for. He wants to get it done, and I think this is going to be one where Nick Saban ultimately does get the job done. And I hate to say that because obviously I know on paper LSU's the better team, but I do think that Alabama ultimately pulls this one out 21-17. And that's really that. It's going to be either Florida State or Alabama, and I think this could be the one.
So, worth noting, I'm going to make sure I'm clear on this. Every single game on LSU's schedule, if LSU had a one-game schedule against every one of these teams, I would pick LSU to win that game. I just think in a 12-game stretch, LSU's going to trip up once, and I don't particularly know which one. It is incredibly rare for a team to go 12-0. It's just very hard to beat 12 times, play your best, be the better team, and play as such. I think LSU trips up, and if you had to make me pick, it's Alabama. But I do think on paper, looking at every matchup on LSU's schedule, LSU's better than every single team on their schedule. That's my opinion. So we'll move on. You get Florida at Baton Rouge. We got Zack Nagy's guy, Billy Napier. Of course, Zack covered ULL when he was a student there and got pretty close with Billy Napier. Zack, first off.
Look, I love Billy. That's an exceptional human being. He's incredible off the field. He's a great man. And, obviously LSU went to Gainesville and got it done in the swamp last year. And I don't see it switching up at all this season. I think Florida's going to struggle. I don't quite believe in Graham Mertz at all at quarterback for them right now. I do love Montrell Johnson. He went from ULL to Florida. So he's an absolute dog, and I love what he brings to the table. But ultimately, LSU just has too much firepower. They're going to get it done in Death Valley. That's going to be an electric atmosphere. I can't wait to see the fan bases clash. But LSU gets it done here, and I'm not quite sure it's going to be, really, really close. I'd probably say 34-14, 35-14. LSU pulls it out here. And, yeah, Napier's my guy, but, business is business. I think LSU gets it done here.
Van, why should LSU have hired Billy Napier instead of Brian Kelly?
They shouldn't have, but he was there. No, look. If you have BK out there, you go get BK. I wasn't when LSU announced Brian Kelly as their coach. I was flummoxed. I had no clue that he was even his. I didn't even hear his name swirling around. I love Napier. I think he's a great. I like guys that come from around these parts. I love what he's been able to do with the talent that he had down there. He is a real coach. I'm a Napier guy. I was a Dave Aranda guy. I love him. I love him as a coach. LSU's going to lose.
To Florida. Oh.
Damn, dude.
This game right here coming after Alabama, this is unfortunate because the Alabama game, even though LSU this game reminds me of 2002, 2003, LSU versus Florida, where Ben Troop spun my beloved Jack Hunt around a couple of times. I think it was I can't remember the score. I think we lost maybe 2 scores or something like that. Florida came in to Tiger Stadium and they beat us, but we clearly had a better team. We're going to win a national championship. I think that coming off the Alabama game, that's going to be an emotional win. That's going to be a game that LSU is going to put their all into. Essentially, they were going to lose one of these games. I think LSU is going to lose this game in front of the home crowd at Florida, which is going to give Billy Napier life because
I was about to ask if you thought it was a prove-it game for Napier.
It's a prove-it game.
I don't disagree with this take at all. I kind of like it, but yeah, no, I love it.
Just a prove-it game for Napier was going to lengthen the. So I think LSU is going to. This is the one to me where they stub their toe.
Okay, so let me clarify on something. Preston, they shouldn't have. Talking about hiring. I was kidding. You take PK. So Glenn Gilbo, who we all love, he of course tweeted out that LSU didn't have the guts. But then I had him on the show after he tweeted that and after LSU beat Florida. And I made him say straight up, okay, so Glenn, LSU didn't have the guts, but who would you have hired? Just straight up tell me. And he did eventually come out and say that LSU, he would have hired Brian Kelly too. So I'm like, so why are you tweeting this, man? So anyways.
He just likes to drive our blood pressure up.
People will notice.
You feel the same, Zack?
He just wants to get a ride. He just wants everybody to be fired up. He just loves firing up people, and he does a damn good job of it. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, he's so good, dude. We were talking about the all-time ratio he had on agreeing with Mason Smith being suspended 2 years after doing an autograph signing for something that it became legal 3 days later. He got 250,000 impressions. 4 people liked the tweet. I'm like, dude, imagine going to Tiger Stadium twice and 7 people clap. Anyways, Florida, as always, has a tough schedule this year. I'm looking at that roster for Florida. I'm not really seeing guys who really impressed me too much. Graham Mertz, their quarterback, we'll see how he does. Not the typical kind of talent you're used to seeing. They play Utah, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, who's trending up, by the way.
I love what Shane Beamer's doing. I love that
guy, bro.
Damn.
Yeah, no. Well, and who's the quarterback? See, y'all know how I am with names. Spencer Rattler, who toward the end of the year, he played as good as any quarterback at the end of the year. Then you get Arkansas as your cross-division opponent for Florida. That's not a good draw. All those games come before the LSU game. I think he goes over in all those games. My question is, will Zack Guy even make it to Tiger Stadium? I don't know. Because Florida is not a program who
they will fire him. No, actually, they probably won't. I'm sure they're going to give him at least another year to prove it, no matter what happens.
Maybe so. But because it's only year 2, But I do know Florida is really quick to fire a coach. I mean, really quick. And while fans might be getting a little antsy about it, it's one thing to say before the season you should be patient. In the middle of a season where you're going like 4-8 or something like that, like it's real quick to say fire the coach. All those support the coach guys leave real quick. I think Florida is going to lose to Utah, to Tennessee, to Kentucky, to South Carolina, to Georgia, to Arkansas. That's all before the LSU game. I think they're going to lose to LSU. I think they might even lose to Missouri, but we'll see. They might get that. I can see them.
Missouri, if they lose all those games and they move to Missouri, they will fire Billy Napier.
And then, by the way, they closed their season with Florida State. I don't know that's a colossal. That's one of the toughest schedules I've ever seen. I think. Look, Zach, all respect to your dude, but he is gonna have some trouble keeping his.
Is tough, though. Ofer is tough. I don't think he goes Ofer per se, but that draw is insane. I mean,
let's put it like this: he'll beat McNeese, he'll beat Charlotte, he'll beat Vanderbilt, and maybe Missouri. I just maybe 5-7 is where we end up. I think making a bowl game for Florida would be good. I think Florida plays LSU tougher. Especially if it's like an interim coach at that point. I think they'll play LSU tougher than they are, but I do think if LSU eventually runs away and wins, something like 31-14, something like that, maybe 38-24. I think LSU will pull away in this game. Georgia State, I have no interesting commentary. I do not know a single player on Georgia State's roster, so I'm just going to pick LSU 51-0. Well, y'all got anything interesting?
The Fun Belt.
The Fun Belt.
The Fun Belt.
The homeland of Zack Nagy. They might be playing in the Pac-12 by then.
I was just about to say that.
That's hilarious.
This is a future Pac-12 team. I was just about this is a future Pac-12 team. Good for them, man.
You gotta go for those Pacific Coast teams from states like Georgia. I mean that Pacific Coast in Georgia is real stout. But anyways, all right. So we're all agreeing a win there, and then Texas A&M, who, LSU had the rebound last year, beat Alabama, looked good against Ole Miss. Looked like LSU was going to go 10-2 on its way to the SEC championship for Georgia, where if you win the game against Georgia, you're in the playoff, right? If you beat Georgia at that point. Even at 11-2, right? You beat Georgia and you beat everybody, but Texas A&M came and crashed the party and upset LSU and has a lot of people questioning LSU. Did LSU actually improve last year, or were there just a couple games in the middle where they peaked? Van, what do you think happens in this Texas A&M? Because Texas A&M has the talent. Some people, I think they're actually ranked 25th. They're picked third in the West. What do you think goes on there?
So we will win. This is a concerning game. We'll win because we'll have a get-right game at Georgia State, and we'll win this game because I think the team will be extra motivated. Let me tell you what concerns me about Texas A&M. I think you guys all know what I'm going to say. Bobby Petrino.
Wow, that's an interesting one.
Like that's concerning because I had grown to really love watching Jimbo Fisher sabotage his own football teams. It was a lot of fun for me watching Jimbo Fisher have great talent and then put him in a wishbone or something and just not being able to get guys in the right positions to make them successful. Look, co-eds on motorcycles aside, Petrino is a fantastic play caller. Shout out to my man Carter Bryant over there at Power Hour LSU.
So good. I love his show.
I love him too.
I see you commenting on there all the time. I'm like, what's up, my guy Van?
Yeah, I love the guy, right? But like Petrino as a play caller is really dynamic, and if there's any sort of working relationship between him and Jimbo, I think the talent that Texas A&M has on the roster will allow them to have a better than expected season. That better than expected season, in my opinion, does not include a win versus LSU in Tiger Stadium. But I will say this is a game that there's going to be a lot to play for. I don't know if you guys think that a 2-loss LSU team can get into the playoff. Maybe they can, depending on what else happens in the SEC. But this could be a game where they are going to need to win, I think, to still have a shot at getting into the playoffs. So it might be a pressure game. I think LSU will win, but I'm looking at Texas A&M having maybe a little bit better of a season than people think that they will. I mean, even though you said they are picked to be third in the West. It's going to be a tough game, but LSU wins. I'll go LSU 32, A&M 24, something like that. But, you know, I pick these weird scores, Zach. I'm not a good score picker. But I think
LSU, I'm like, yeah.
32 is weird. But I think LSU wins the game. But it's going to be a competitive football game.
Okay, so I don't think Texas A&M is going to have a bad year per se. It's just kind of one of those like years that leaves you with a sour taste in your mouth. Like, we've invested this much in this coach for, I mean, we're going to go 8-4 and win, you know, the Military Bowl or the Texas Bowl or whatever. Really? Like, it's not bad enough to get the coach fired, but it's not good enough to really excite the fans. It's going to be that same spot where LSU was under Les Miles for so many years. Basically, since that 2011 championship run, LSU for 5+ years was just kind of you went 10-3, then you went 10-3, and both of those 10-3 teams in 2012, 2013 vastly underperformed for their talent. I mean, they had some dudes on those rosters. I mean, Odell Beckham, Jeremy Hill, Jarvis Landry, Mettenberger. There's no reason you should only win 20 games in 2 years with those guys I just named. You had them for both those teams, by the way. But that's kind of where they're at. And I think the relationship between Petrino and Jimbo Fisher, you would think that those two minds in one room, they're going to cook up an offensive masterpiece. I think it's going to be a bit of a power struggle, and I think they're just going to be okay. I think they're probably going to finish like I think Ole Miss might be a little bit of a better team, more well coached, but not the talent. But they don't have the talent that Texas A&M has. I think the battle between them for third and fourth. I think LSU takes care of business, and I think this will be a low scoring affair. I think we're talking like 24-10, something like that. So that being said, Van thinks LSU. Wait! I didn't get you, Zach. I almost skipped you. Go ahead. Tell me what. Tell me what happens.
For the most part, y'all kind of nailed it from what y'all were saying. I completely agree. I think that recruiting class that they had obviously is something special. It's hard to perform as a true freshman in the SEC, and so they struggled last year. But you have a year under your belt now, and now you come into year 2 in the system. I think Connor Wegman, their quarterback, they just announced him the starter, and I think he's an absolute dog.
5 stars.
And a guy that some people, if he's not on your radar now, put him on your radar. Evan Stewart, their wide receiver, he was a true freshman last year, and he was incredible. I think he's going to have an all-SEC type year this year for Texas A&M. Evan Stewart is super dynamic. He's fast. He's a speedster. He's incredible in open space. He's put on more size. I think their offense is going to be significantly improved, and I think I think there were a couple of things, Van, that you said that I agree with in that realm, in a heavy way. There's an interesting dynamic with what they do, and I think ultimately Wegman and Evan Stewart's going to be an incredible duo to watch out for. And then again, with all that being said, it could be a year, where Texas 8-4 goes 8-4 once again. So I don't see them beating LSU. I think LSU gets it done 27-21. It's going to be a little bit closer than I would like, but I think it's going to be one where you pull it out, you end the season on a positive note, and you keep chugging, you move on from there.
I think one thing that Texas A&M is going to struggle with this year is losing a consummate leader and a player with the maturity of a Denver Harris. I think having a guy like that.
You're insane. You're a dog. I was sitting there, I'm like, where's he going with them? I'm like, oh, God.
We love you, Denver. Just making fun, brother. Come on, man. Step up to the plate. We need you. We need you. Bro. Cut it out, dog. We need you.
Oh, my God.
I'm messing around. We need you, man.
Oh, man, that's funny. That's funny. So one of the things about dog. One of the things about Texas A&M is, yes, they've recruited at an elite level, but they haven't really retained that talent and developed that talent at the level they need to be an elite program. And part of that is guys like Denver Harris, who's now on LSU's roster as a third-string cornerback. That being said, we all have LSU 11-1. Van picked LSU and all the big ones and picked Florida to upset them. I picked Florida to get Billy Napier fired. Zack picked LSU to go 11-1 and drop Alabama, just like me. We're on the exact same page. Last season, I had Van on here. He nailed it, 9-3 last year. So here's the things that until you get the record wrong, you got to keep on coming on here and predict the schedule until you get it wrong.
I'm into it. I want to ask a question real quick.
Okay.
You two guys, it's always so much fun, man. And let me tell you something else real quick about coming on and talking to Preston. I'm out here in Los Angeles doing stuff. This is like being back home again, talking about LSU, getting grounded. So I really appreciate you guys letting me come on here and kick it and talk LSU with you. When I'm on the Ringer talking with Bill and everybody else, it's not really the only guy that I get to talk a lot of sports with is Ryan Russillo. It's a great guy.
Mm-hmm. And Kanye.
Kanye, yeah. Could talk a lot of college football. I mean, obviously the Ringer is all sports, but college football, that's I'm not into it as much. I want to know from both of you guys, who do you think is going to win the East? Georgia,
but keep an eye on Tennessee. Keep an eye on them. I mean, they could be really good. I'm a believer. Joe Milton reminds me a lot of Jamarcus Russell, only more polished than Jamarcus Russell. Because you have to go pretty far back, but if you actually watch game highlights of Jamarcus Russell, he was a sloppy mess, and it was like a Picasso painting. It was just beautiful. But Joe Milton's got the strongest arm I've seen since Jamarcus Russell. So watch out.
Like nuts.
Yeah.
He took that ball 90 yards pretty effortlessly. I've seen a couple of clips.
Yeah.
He's that dude.
He is that dude. He threw an orange 110 yards.
He's insane.
Did he really?
Yeah, before the Orange Bowl. Remember, we had the orangest Orange Bowl of all time with Clemson and Tennessee in the Orange Bowl last year. So as like one of their social media videos, they asked him how far he could throw an orange, and he stood at the goal line and threw it at the fence behind the other goal post. Yeah, I mean, the dude's got a cannon.
He's a freak.
So if it's Georgia, do you think LSU has a legitimate shot at revenge?
Well, and that's what I wanted to get to. So instead of answering that, let me reframe this into where I want to take this to end the show. Last year, we didn't really get to talk any postseason. You were at 9-3. I was 8-4. And like, what do you talk about postseason? Like, yeah, I think they're going to end up in the Music City Bowl against Kansas State. Like, it's not fun. We're all at 11-1. That means postseason implications. Okay. My prediction is that LSU would not be able to beat Georgia. I think Georgia is a steamroller. I think they've got tons of talent and they are rocking and rolling. I predict that LSU won't have to beat Georgia, though, because what I think is going to happen is Bama wins the West. They're going to drop it to Tennessee, but they're going to take care of business. They're going to beat Texas, and they're going to beat LSU, and they're going to have that headbreaker tie, and they're going to go to Georgia, go in the SEC championship and go face Georgia, where they will be throttled. And I think LSU makes the playoffs, sitting there at 11-1 and gets in as like the 3 or 4 seed. And understand, they're not going to seed LSU fairly. They're going to seed it to where like they don't have the all SEC or whatever. I think like LSU, if Georgia's 1, LSU will be 3. They don't want the SEC or maybe they do. Maybe they do actually, because it's not a rematch. But I do think they would do it if Alabama won. They would want to avoid the rematch in the first round. So that being said, I think LSU makes it to the playoff. And looking around the country at the other teams that I think might make it, Michigan, Ohio State, maybe a USC, maybe a Washington, maybe a Georgia. I think most people have them in there.
You're riding the Penix train, but saying Washington, huh?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, he's very good, and they also have a talented receiving core. I'm just looking at the teams that are candidates to make it there, basically, right? I think LSU's got a very good roster. I don't think they've got one that can win, that can go 2-0 in games against those teams. I think that LSU makes the playoffs and gets knocked out in the playoffs. I don't think LSU wins at all. I think LSU's ranked appropriately at about 5. And I think that ultimately, I think it's a good thing for this team because that's the kind of season that's been missing from LSU for so long. We've won 3 championships in my lifetime. And you went to another. The problem is that in between those championships, LSU has been a middling team way too much with not enough signature national exposure. LSU needs to make it so. That's why you hired a guy like Brian Kelly, who won 50 games in his last 5 years at Notre Dame. I mean, I'm sorry. It was more than that. It was more than 10 games. You need to average 10 or more wins a year at LSU, period. And LSU has the resources. LSU is one of 3 special jobs in the country where the recruiting territory is just an unfair advantage. Georgia, Ohio State are the other 2. And to be quite frank, with Georgia Tech being a Power 5 team and with Cincinnati becoming one, I'm kind of disrespecting them, but those are the 3 programs where you don't really have to split a ton of in-state talent with another Power 5 team. These are the seasons you need for LSU, and that is why you hired Brian Kelly. I do think he's going to string it together and have a championship eventually. I just don't think year 2 is it. I think it's coming, though. So Van, what do you think is waiting for LSU in a postseason where they got upset by Florida but beat Alabama and Florida State and finished 11-1? Is that the SEC championship?
Georgia's stacked. Georgia's stacked. And not only does Georgia have outstanding talent, but they have an identity. They have a recreatable philosophy, offense and defense. Monken's offense just makes me ill. Just how efficient it is. That said, I think we beat them.
You think they beat Georgia in the SEC championship? Nice.
I think we beat them in Atlanta. To be a team with the type of dominance that Georgia has been for 3 years in a row, it's very difficult to do.
All right, we'll go off what happens in the playoff.
But I think we win the SEC. I do not think this is a national championship season. I think that we probably do lose in the playoff. What I'm looking at around the country, I am not a big USC believer, especially after the
They didn't look great, no.
The thrashing. Yeah.
But hold up, Caleb Williams can still sling it. But that team has Tackett Curtis, by the way, running out there starting as a true freshman out of Manny, Louisiana.
He's that dude, though.
He's that dude, but also that defense is not that defense.
He's talented, man. I hated to see him leave Louisiana, but yeah.
Yeah, like it was also. I also hated trying to listen to the announcers pronounce the name of the city. Manny, Louis, get out of here. Respect us. But no. So I'm not a big USC guy. However, I don't think LSU would probably beat Michigan, depending on how Michigan is. I think Ohio State, that's a tough task, I think. But, I think LSU beats Georgia in the SEC championship game. I really do. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you guys. Even if I thought that they wouldn't, I want all the Georgia people to know right now, after how you guys carried on last year, I was in Atlanta. After how y'all carried on last year, considering the fact that we thump you every time we meet you in Atlanta like stepchildren for the last 15 years, I'll never, ever forget it. I remember sitting in, the last thing I'll say, I remember sitting in Tiger Stadium, 95, 96, something, whatever like that. Steve Spurrier comes in there, embarrasses us, does all kinds of stuff. I remember looking at my father, God rest his soul. And I'll never forget this. I don't care who Florida could be playing. They could be playing Lucifer and all of his angels. I want them to lose. Okay? Felt that way about Georgia. I was there last year. I wouldn't pick LSU to lose to Georgia if Georgia had Herschel Walker 1981. So they might very well be not as talented as Georgia. They're going to win 72-3.
So one game LSU is going to win 170 to -3, and then LSU is going to beat Georgia 72-3, but drop in the playoff.
They have the dot Grambling points. That's how bad it's going to be.
Man, some friendly fire there with the in-state HBCU. Zach, what's your postseason thoughts for LSU?
I was going to say hypothetically, let's say Bama loses 2 games and LSU makes to the SEC championship game. I'd love to see a rematch of Georgia and LSU. I'm a big fan of Carson Beck. I really think that he can kind of fit into that offense like a glove again and, be a game manager, because that's really all they need is a game manager with all the weapons that they have. I mean, Georgia's locked and loaded. Of course, they lost their running back, but it is what it is. For the most part, let's say Georgia and LSU meet in the SEC championship game. I'm going to have to say that LSU drops that one and barely misses the playoff. I don't think a 2-loss – I know, Van, I'm sorry. I don't think a 2-loss LSU team makes the playoff. And, they took steps in the right direction, and I think ultimately the next year will be where you take that next step once again. But I think hypothetically you make it to the SEC championship game and drop it and work from there and see which bowl game you get.
So Bama beats LSU in your projection, but Bama doesn't make it to the West. Does that mean you think Bama loses to Tennessee?
I'm not sure if it's Tennessee. I'm intrigued to see that Texas matchup.
Because they would have to lose 2 games, or there would have to be some weird 3-way tie.
No, I would say that they'd have to lose 2 games. And I think that Texas game is going to be a really intriguing game.
Well, but that's out of conference. You got to lose another one.
Yeah, I
know it's tough. You got to work through 1,000 scenarios, but I just think that's interesting.
Yeah. So hypothetically, the SEC championship game and work from there, and we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting way to see how it all goes down. I'd love to see them make the college football playoff, but I just don't know if it's in the cards this year. We'll see.
Zach, can I ask you something?
Hit me.
With all of the anticipation and enthusiasm from the fan base, if they didn't make the college football playoff this year, do you think most people would view it as a disappointing season?
I've had this conversation with so many people, dude. It's like, is it college football playoff or bust for LSU this year? And I've just had that conversation with a ton of people, and I'd be contradicting myself if I said yes, it is college football playoff or bust because of what I just said. But based off of what people have told me, in a way, that's that next step. You went to the SEC championship game. That next step is to make it to the college football playoff. If you lose, you lose, but at least you took that next jump. So is it college football playoff or bust? It's tough for me to say. I would love to say yes, but I'd like to say no at the same time. I'm so on the fence. I'm split right 50-50 because I know what this team's capable of, and I think that they can reach, that next step. It's just going to be where Jayden Daniels can take them, like I said forever ago. And I think he really can take them there, but I'm just so conflicted right now. I need to see what happens with Florida State, and then I can get back to you on that.
Yeah. By the way, I totally whiffed. I forgot to put up my Twitter poll. I did a poll with 500 respondents talking about what expectations for LSU this year are. 96% of respondents think LSU will win 10 or more games during the regular season. So to say expectations are high is a bit of an understatement. That being said, 44% picked 11-1, and about 20% picked 12-0. So 66% of people think LSU should be right there at the playoff. I think if you're knocking on the door of the playoffs, it's not a disappointment. I think LSU just show that your program is winning more games and not struggling against weaker. Show that you actually were a better team than the last year's LSU team.
You're trending in the right direction.
You'll keep people happy. I don't think it's playoff or bust. I think that's a little too high for year 2 of Brian Kelly. Well, Van, great stuff as always. Love having you on, man. So knowledgeable. And you're here for the long run. You're the only guy I bring on who denies any sort of plug. So give me closing thoughts. You want to call the Notre Dame guy an asshole again? I mean, what you want to end with?
Made me sick. Guy, I don't like him. Okay. I reached out, and at first I thought he was cool, whatever. And then whatever. I don't want to get into a whole personal thing, but it's like now I don't want to see Notre Dame win, which is weird because they got a black coach. So it's like I'm like, oh, I want to see the brother do well, but like now that guy's put me off Notre Dame. Saw Sam Hartman out there. He's 37 years old, quarterback in Notre Dame.
17th year senior is what I was calling him.
Hold up. He's been throwing passes since 2018.
Bruh, I seriously remember the show QB1.
Yeah, I watched that. Like,
I watch him on the other guys are in the NFL.
I know exactly. Like that's the comparison that I make every time I see Hartman singing rock. I'm like, I watched him on that. Like, yeah,
Like, the other guys are in the NFL. They're like
exactly.
in the NFL. So, but look, no, I don't want to plug anything. Things are going really well. I'm on Twitter. We're making movies, doing all kinds of great things. I just love talking LSU with you. I do it whenever you want. Zach, it's great to meet you. Preston, thanks for having me. Nothing really to plug.
All right, appreciate you guys. Well, y'all go follow Latham Jr. on Twitter. He's active there. I appreciate you for coming on as always, Van. All right, well, back to me and Zach here, guys. I appreciate y'all for watching. We went way over tonight. I appreciate Zach and Van for sticking on through the stretch. We will not have a show this long ever again, but I think we all had so much fun with it that it's kind of cool. It is what it is. Y'all make sure to give Zack a follow at Zack Nagy, ZNaggy20. You see it there. He's doing incredible work with Zack, Sports Illustrated all over every sport on campus. He's constantly there. So lots of good stuff. He goes sicko mode with some of his notes and write-ups. So y'all make sure to go check him out. And guys, if you enjoyed the show tonight, please, please, please hit that like button so Mike Scarborough does not bully me during the week. Appreciate you, Zach, and y'all have an excellent night. Thank you for watching.